What is up, everyone? This is NIKK-C here with the brand new Rane 72 battle mixer. Just on my first day with the unit at the moment. Just running through some of the nitty-gritty features. Going to try and bring some answers to the questions that you wouldn't think to ask about the mixer, but let's run you through some of the stuff that I've found with the mixer so far. Some stuff that's pretty cool. So, over in Ableton Live, we're going to just see how the mixer performs as a sound card. So first of all, we're just going to have a look at the input configuration. As you can see here, the Rane 72 gives you up to 14 inputs, and it gives you 6 outputs. So let's have a look at what those outputs could potentially mean for your recording or DAW setup. So this is the 14 inputs of the mixer in action. So if you can see on the far left, you've got the deck A and deck B pre-fader inputs. So what that means is what comes into the back of the mixer here into channels A and B. Just here's some time code here for you. You can see on channels 1 and 2 there that we're getting some input there. No matter what I do with the input fader or with the channel strip, it's not going to affect what's coming in on the input there, because that means the signal coming into the that channel of the sound card is the raw phono or line input, whatever you've got plugged into that channel. So moving on to channels 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and 9 and 10. Alright, channels 5 and 6 I found was the mix record output of the mixer. So that means whatever is coming out of your sort of blended output, so that could be your sampler, channels 1 and 2, your microphone, everything that's coming out of the mixer and the levels that they're set at is going to be coming into inputs 5 and 6. How is that useful? You can use that for recording your mixes as you're doing them, or recording, you know, a whole live stream of everything that's going into your mixer. That's pretty cool. On to channels 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, this is where it starts to get interesting. So this will, for channels 7 and 8, will show you the inputs for channel 1 and 2, or sorry, channel 1 of the mixer with inputs 1 and 2, and that's going to be affected by the input level of your fader or your channel strip. So if you drop any amount of gain or EQ, everything is going to get recorded into channels 7 and 8, even when you close the crossfader. So what does that mean? That means you can be recording your scratches independently of any other things that are going on other channels of the mixer. So you could have perhaps a beat coming into channels 9 and 10 of the mixer, which would be this half of the mixer here, channel 2. And that means you could record your scratches for a mixtape or a track or whatever independently of other stuff going on the mixer. That goes exactly the same for channel 9 and 10, except it's going to be the opposite side of the crossfader. So what that means is you could be recording channels 7 and 8, 9 and 10 independently of each other, and you could record both sides of your mix as you're doing them as separate channels for any post-processing or mixing and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. So moving on to channels 13 and 14, they are your mono input channels for your microphone. Microphone input 1 and microphone input 2. The controls are on the front panel for microphone input 2. To get any input for those, you need to have the switches switched on, or the button here, green, needs to be lit up in the on position for any inputs to be coming in. So once you have something connected to the XLR or the Nutric input there, you'll start to see some inputs there. So that's really cool, because you could effectively use the Rane 72 as a fully fledged sound card for recording MCs, vocal inputs, perhaps some solo instruments. You can do your scratches, you can record some line inputs, and you can do it using about 4 channels, or sorry, looks like 6 channels of those inputs you can use for recording inputs. The rest of them will be post-fader levels, which will also be really useful. So yeah, 14 inputs there, that's really useful. And as I said before, in the preferences we have access to 6 outputs. Outputs are corresponding to 1 and 2 means that it'll come out of your channel 1 of the mixer. If you outroute any of your outputs to 3 and 4, it'll come to channel 2 of your mixer, and then 5 and 6 will come out through your sampler output here. So basically, you want to avoid recording and routing any audio back into the channel. You'll get a feedback loop if you route some audio out into back into channels 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 into themselves, so you'll get a feedback loop with that. So avoid that. If you want to use an output for Ableton, try and use outputs 5 and 6 for your dedicated master output to avoid some of those feedback loops. What else have we got? So some stuff that we wanted to play around with. Let's see what happens when you plug a MIDI device into the hub on the back. I know it says it's for the Rane 12 units, but let's see what happens when we connect a USB input. I'll actually have to show you the Ableton preferences to show you what happens there. Let's see what happens when we connect the MIDI device, and as you can see here, we can see the launch key MIDI turn up in the list of inputs there. So that's kind of cool. We can connect MIDI devices to the back of the mixer. Let's see what also happens when you connect a hard drive. This is a USB 3 hard drive. It's connected up, and let's see what happens. I can hear some sound on the hard drive. There's a little light. Look, the hard drive just popped up in my Finder on the desktop. That's kind of cool. Would you trust it? I probably wouldn't without giving it some thorough testing. But let's see what else we can see about the mixer. So this is the system report from Mac OS, and it's telling us that when it sees the Rane 72 as a USB bus, it sees it only as a USB 2 device, which is fair enough. It's got a USB 2 connector. I don't think there was any advertisement that it was a USB-C compliant or 3 compliant device. So yeah, if you've got a hard drive and you've run out of USB ports on your laptop and you're willing to roll the dice on that one, be my guest. But as I said, it's not advertised that it's a hub as well. But you know, that's still cool to know. Let's just do the safe thing and eject my drive and wait for that to disappear. Come on. Okay, let's see what else we can see. Alright, now, one thing I like to do with new mixers, especially new DVS mixers with buttons and knobs and all sorts of user input controls, is see what we can see in MIDI. Run through some basic stuff with the mixer. Obviously, when you move the crossfader, it's going to send you some control input messages. So it looks like on channel 16, when you move the crossfader, it sends you some messages there. Can't tell what the data message is from that from that one there, but you can tell it's sending a controller change message, or from 0 through to 127. So that's 128 bits, or you know, different positions that you can see the crossfader when you're looking at it as a MIDI device. The upfader looks like it's sending control message 28. Buttons. Okay, we're sending note messages on channel 5 for the pads. It looks as though in just solo mode, when you don't have Serato connected, so that's probably in channels A and B, and phono mode, you obviously won't have all of these lit up, but when you press them, they'll send note messages. Probably when you hold down Shift and go into one of the user pad messages, it might send a different message. So it looks like now it sends the note messages on channel 13. So that's kind of cool. You can still have some different user modes when you are using the mixer independently of Serato. Let's see what other things we can see. Let's press some buttons and see what inputs pop up. Okay, cool. So some of these buttons up the top all send MIDI. The filter cutoff knob. All of the EQs send some MIDI buttons on the top. All the mic on and off buttons. So those are things that you may be able to map to things in a battle routine. You may, you know, have some particular, you know, things that you want to map that, you know, don't want to affect any of the rest of the sound. So map some mic buttons to an effect or something like that. So that's kind of cool. Other things that send some MIDI are the front switch for the mic on and off. Okay, I'm just playing with the switches for toggling the reverse mode of the input faders and the crossfader. That seems to be turning some notes on and off, which is kind of cool. I don't know why you'd use it, but yeah, you can send MIDI from a little switch on the front of the mixer. That's pretty neat. One of the things I found that doesn't send MIDI on the mixer is the Flex FX button, oh sorry, knob, and the buttons here as well. They don't send any MIDI at all. Neither does the encoder here. By the looks of it, you could get some encoder information from the top scroll knob, as well as clicking it in and pressing the back button as well. So you can send some MIDI from some extra parameters, some extra controls on top of the mixer there. So what does that mean? Again, you know, if you want to be kind of creative in the studio, you don't necessarily want to be using Serato all the time. You want to do something cool. So let's jump over to Max MSP. This is a program that I play with for making different applications, for toying with audio signal processing and some MIDI data as well. So what will we do? First of all, we were tapping the MIDI pads on the mixer, and we could see there on channel 5 we're getting notes 20, 21, 22, all the way up to 27. Okay, over in Max we're going to see if we can talk to the Rane 72 mixer. So let's send it some MIDI information. Let's send it a note out on port A, which is the Rane 72 when I've set it up in Max. And we're going to send it out on channel 5, as we just saw on the MIDI monitor just before. So once we've made that, we'll make a note, and we're going to make a note velocity of 60, and we're going to make it a duration of 200 milliseconds. So that's you know, a fifth of a second. Once we've done that, let's go back. We're going to go count from 20 to 28. They are the notes for the message, for the MIDI pads that were coming out. And let's set up a toggle and a metronome module, and we're going to send it a new note, or send out a bang message to tell the counter to go up 1 every 300 milliseconds, and let's see what happens on the Rane 72 when we turn that on. Look at that. That's awesome. So we've got a note being made every 300 milliseconds. It's counting upwards from note 20 to 28, and it's sending a velocity of 60. Let's do something cool, and let's change the color of the velocity as we go around. So I've got it changing different colors as well. So when you send a different velocity to the pad, you are sending it a different RGB value to change it to a different color. So that's one way to talk to the pads. What can you do with that? Again, you could probably set up a cool little step sequencer. You know, do something with the Rane 72 that uses it a bit like a musical instrument, or a drum machine, or whatever else you want. You know, that's kind of cool. So one other thing, not sure if anyone noticed this before, but when I was hitting the pads, it was telling us what channel was coming in, what note number was coming in, but also the third column there is also telling us a velocity. That means that's the mixer is telling us how hard you're hitting the pad. So you hit it soft, you're getting 40, 42. Hit it a lot harder, you're getting 100, 124, 127. So it's a bit of a fair whack to get a full 127. I'd say that the sensitivity could be probably a lot more sensitive with the Rane. With the internal settings here on the mixer, I've got pad sensitivity all the way up to 100 here, and it's a pretty fair whack to get 127. But I don't think not everyone's going to use that feature because I don't know. We'll see. We'll see who uses it. How is it useful? You could connect it to a drum rack in Ableton, and you could have velocity sensitive pads. I don't think they advertised this for the Rane 72, that the pads were velocity sensitive, but it's a nice surprise anyway. That's pretty cool. One thing I noticed that is possibly missing is the spec sheet of the Rane 72 that said that the pads offered Aftertouch. Aftertouch is a mini message that gets sent after you've hit down a key. So imagine you've hit down a key on a keyboard, and you've applied some extra pressure to the key after you've hit it. So let's have a look on the pad here. I've hit the pad, I'm still holding it. I've tried pressing it down even harder. Nothing's happened with the message here. I'm sort of rocking up and down, and only till a certain point where I lift my finger up enough can we see that the note's turning on and off. But that's not Aftertouch. That just seems to be the note being re-triggered again. Don't know if that's missing. I don't know. Maybe that could be a mistake from Rane saying that the pads offered Aftertouch when they actually offered velocity sensitivity. But yeah, who knows? Just to confirm that on my MIDI monitor that we can see some Aftertouch information. I'll just send some replica Aftertouch information now on channel 1. I'm just moving a fader. You can't see up and down, but probably on the MIDI monitor there you could potentially see something moving, maybe not. Let's double check that. Let's double check my sources from max 1 or 2. That's probably going to help. All right. Let's try again. I'm going to move my Aftertouch emulation, and nope, still nothing. But anyway, that's something to investigate another day. Aftertouch. We may never ever have to use it, but one day could be cool if there were some features built in perhaps to Serato that used aftertouch of the pads or the velocity sensitivity with the sampler. Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't played with the Serato sampler enough to know. Maybe it does use velocity sensitivity. If you hit the pad soft, the sample might play quiet. When you hit it really hard, it may play at full volume or something like that. That's just something to think about. So let's have a look at some other stuff with the mixer. This is one thing that I always kind of look for in a mixer when it comes out, because I like to play with the up faders quite a bit when I'm scratching. Just adds a bit of character to your performance style and all of that. And one thing that's funny with Rane sometimes is the up fader curve. So let's just have a quick look at how the mixer performs. This is just some timecode signal here. Don't know if you can hear that, but I'm just playing some timecode at the moment. When I fade the mixer volume down with the up fader, it drops it all the way down. I found moving it up gradually, just the tiniest little bit, it goes from nothing to something in quite a jump. I found that if you were to turn the level, at the moment I'm turning the up fader curve knob, and I've just assigned it to the send in Ableton, so you can see if I've got it, low to high. So when I've got it low, the fader seems to perform in a nice sort of gradual way. You get a fade in. But once I kind of move away from there, so even to here, is where you start to get that little point where it doesn't fade anymore. It's just a jump from nothing to something. Anything past 12 o'clock, I've found provides a very negligible difference. Like anything from here all the way through to here, you're still going to be cutting sharp on the bottom, but you'd have to be very, very specific to have a preference over from having the up fader curve from here as opposed to here, because the fader cuts in immediately pretty much anywhere, even some points on from anywhere from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock on the knob, seems to provide a bit of a strange up fader curve. But all the parts on the mixer seem to have a bit of a firmware update happen to them when I ran it across the mixer. To get into what mixer mode, what firmware are we on at the moment? Can't tell. Actually, yep. So we're on version 1.10.19. Sorry about the glare there. There you go. 1.10.19. And so that's possibly something that I might play with in future updates. It's definitely something that I'd like to see to offer a bit more of an up fader curve that lets you cut sharp at the top, so you can do some of those more sort of transform techniques using the up fader as well, because at the moment anywhere from, I'd say, here to here is a very similar output. But that's what you get. That's it's still a beautiful mixer. Lots of wonderful stuff to play with. Lots of great features. I'm sure I'll probably be hitting you guys with another video soon enough with more stuff we've discovered. Before I go, is there anything else that I didn't cover? Oh yes, some things that actually make the mixer a little bit different to the Pioneer S9 is just the way that the mixer behaves as a sound card. You'll probably notice before that with the Ableton list of inputs, we could see that the Rane 72 gave us a list of 14 inputs, and all of those seemed to be pretty much spoken for when we went through the list. But I didn't really go into what happens when you push down on the FX toggle. At the moment, it looks like when you've got the FX toggle turned on, it doesn't seem to add anything to any of the input channels there. So it's what is that noise? Oh, I've got the effect on. I had time code running through the Flex FX loop. Anyway, so what I was saying was, yeah, the Flex FX toggles don't route any sound out through any of the sound card inputs. That makes this mixer different from the Pioneer S9. Don't know if any of you have seen the S9's control panel. I'll see if I can bring it up for you now. So let me quickly add you in to see what I can see with the S9 utility panel. But you can see the list of inputs and outputs for the mixer here. The thing I'm talking about with the FX toggle is USB channels 7 and 8. You can see here the effects send is where the mixer actually diverts some of the audio out of the mixer through USB channels 7 and 8. You can do stuff with them with some effects on your computer, like a VST effect or something like that, and then route it back into the S9. It looks as though the 72 doesn't offer that functionality, but you know, it's definitely not a deal breaker. It's just one of those sort of routing features that makes the mixer a little bit different to its competitor. You probably won't run into a situation where you desperately need that, but it's something to look into if you want something like a post fader effect on a VST. If you're after something like that, have a look back into your Rane 62s if you've got them, and check out those red buttons on the FX panel. They'll actually show you that you can route some audio through a software-based effect if you want to do that sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of cool. And the last thing I noticed as well is when you toggle the FX toggle into either position, sends quite a few messages. So that was just one on and off. So it sends like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different MIDI messages when you turn the FX toggle on. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. I don't know if there's a reason for it. But it looks as though if you want to be MIDI mapping your FX toggle to something in Ableton or Max MSP or whatever else you want to be doing, probably stick to channels 9 and 1 and note messages 5 and 0. So yeah, that's some pretty nerdy stuff about the Rane 72. Like I said, these are the answers to the questions that you didn't ask, but yeah, bringing you answers anyway. I hope this helps. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. I'll hit you guys back with some more videos in the future playing around with the Rane 72. But in the meantime, have fun researching whatever you can about the mixer, and hit me up if you've got any questions, and I'm more than happy to try and answer some of your questions. Give us a yell. Take care, guys. Peace.